So good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name's Nancy Canning, and I'm thrilled to be here. I'm the author of Your Life's Calling, Getting Unstuck, very important, and Fulfilling Your Life Lessons, doubly important. I really have made this my life work. I started this back in 1980 when I first learned about belief systems, which is simply that programming in our brain that gets recorded when we're young, mostly. When we're young children, we're trying to figure out life. We are witnessing life. Is when we go, this is how life is, that's, instead of saying that's how life is right now from my little 3-year-old perspective, instead what we take into our subconscious mind is, this is how life is forever, in all situations perhaps. And so what happens as we grow older, we get into our 30s, 40s, 50s, 70s, 80s, we're actually still functioning from thinking and experiences that occurred when we were 3 years old, 5 years old, 7 years old. It creates patterns that we begin to resent in our lives. It's the patterns that keep us from maybe being successful. We feel like we can only go so far, and then we get blocked or we sabotage. I'm sure everyone here knows about self-sabotage. It's the fancy word for saying we keep messing up and doing things that take us back to where we think, away from where we think we should be going. And so we look at these patterns in our life, and we will begin to do lots of kinds of therapy, and we'll begin to do lots of reading and many of the things we all do to literally get rid of it, to get beyond it, to figure out how come, what's wrong with me. The trouble is this: we're trying to change the consciousness many times that way from the same thinking that created it. And that's the Albert Einstein quote that says you cannot change something from the same consciousness that created it. So if you have a thought, a belief system that's strongly held, such as, I'm not good enough, and so which is very common, different aspects of I'm not good enough, you can spend your time trying to prove you're good enough. You'll do many things to prove and to wonder and to show that you have worth. The trouble is this: you're still doing it from the mindset, the underlying mindset that I'm not good enough, and if I just work harder, then I will be good enough. And that pattern is not going to lead you where you want to go, which is to have this sense inside of absolute worth and fulfillment. Because that's the bigger message in the book. The book begins with all about belief systems because it's very helpful to know, how do we get to be the way we are? How do these patterns in our life really get formed, and why are they stuck? When we do therapy and all the other work, how come when we're intelligent adults, we're still doing the same thing that we've done for years and years and years? That's the frustrating part. That's the part we want to just get rid of it. If only that weren't in my life, I could go succeed and I would have a great life. And many times that's our thinking. So I have a different viewpoint on it. And that viewpoint is actually those limitations, those obstacles that we see are a huge blessing. They're actually the pathway to what we've come to be, learn, and do this lifetime. They're not the obstacle at all. So the thought, I'm not good enough, really isn't the enemy as we think it is. And something that happened in childhood or some horrendous event, because it seems to be wrecking our lives. It seems to be that's what's causing me not to have enough money, or not to have the love, or not to have the relationship I want, or to keep me stuck. Many times people come and see me in sessions because they're basically feeling stuck. They know what they want, they see it, they feel it, and they cannot take that step. They can't get there because there's patterns in their life that are holding them back, so they think. So a different way of looking at it is, yes, we can work to alleviate some of the charge and the energy in those beliefs to help us move on. But another way of looking at it is, what if those beliefs that seem to limit us really are what we've come to learn this lifetime? What if they are absolutely this golden pathway that will lead us where we want to go on a soul level? So I look at our lives not from the physical level as much as from this spiritual level, from the higher soul level of who am I and what have I come in to learn? And how do I figure that out? And then how do I stay in alignment with that? And what I've learned through all these years of working with people and their beliefs is, when you look at your life and see a recurring couple of issues, the really big ones that you want to get rid of, you can step back from those and go, that's what I've come in to learn. There's something here that is ordainedly, literally there's an ordained divine order to life that I so firmly believe in. And when we look at this, we can begin to see it's my pathway. So if you have a belief that says, I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not this enough, or I'm not that enough, which is so prevalent, if you step back and begin to say, okay, I have come in to learn and to really know on a deep core low soul level, I am enough. If that's what you've come in to learn, you're not going to come into a family that affirms you and tells you you're wonderful and that you are enough, because where's the learning? You didn't really learn anything, you just came in knowing it. But if you come into a family dynamic in which you feel as though you're put down, as though you feel criticized, and it's all this that goes on in childhood that you look back on and you resent and you try and work through, and don't speak to family, whatever the story might be. Instead, if we turn it around and begin to see, that's what I've come in to learn. That big obstacle in my life is my soul's deepest calling and yearning, that I would know the deeper truth of who I am. And we learn it many times through these kinds of seeming obstacles. And so we have situations in our life that happen. We seem to have nothing to do with it, so to speak, but that's another discussion for another night. And when these like atrocities or difficulties or tragedies or big losses occur, we get to opportunity to look and see, how has that come into my life to benefit who I really am and what I'm here to learn. And the learning happens and the growth happens by being able to step back and go, if this were all really divinely ordained, if there really were no mistakes, if that were true, then how is this circumstance for my highest good? And we begin to look at our life from highest good, which is a completely reverse tactic from how most therapies and everything else goes, that says there's something wrong and we need to fix it. Instead, what if it's all perfect and we're just looking at it now from a new way, from a way of saying that my soul has called me to this. I was looking on the later part of the book is the soul's perspective. So first we have the human perspective of really understanding, how do these beliefs form, and what are ways to change them, how does healing occur, and then, because that's the human level, we want the healing, and then the more important one, I believe, is your soul's perspective. And what I write is that before coming into this lifetime, you, as your soul higher self, planned what you wanted to learn, experience, and accomplish during your time on earth. Your soul is calling you to remember your plans. The difficult part, and it's something we were talking about earlier this evening, is, but what about these huge atrocities? And I talk about, we wanted to learn and grow, and as an immortal soul, we agreed to what we would come to learn. And so when these terrible things happen, we go, did we cause them? And that really is a different languaging. That's more like from the 1980s, when we had what was called metaphysical malpractice. No matter what happens, it's like, why'd you create that? That's not a real kind way of looking at life. Instead, we look at our life and go, something within me, my life, is calling me to pay attention. And I know we have all had that experience. You get a little whisper to pay attention to something, and we ignore it, right? And then we get a little bit louder message, and we might ignore that. And then it starts getting worse, and we might start to listen, but decide we've got time. We don't really need to make this change in our life that we're being called to make. Until finally some tragedy may happen to where we have to wake up and make some life changes. And we go, why did this happen to me? Well, not always, but there are many instances, if you'll be really honest, that there were lots of warnings and lots of little subtle knowings within you. Because the one thing I know for sure is everything is within us. That knowing of who we are, what we've come to learn, the essence of our soul is absolutely within us. And our life is calling us to remember who we are. And it calls to us through these patterns and these things that happen to us that we would prefer not to have. But when they happen, we pay attention, don't we? We're not paying so much attention if life is really good and you've got everything you want in life. You're not as motivated to pay attention to what is it my soul is asking. What is it that might be deeper for me to be accomplishing this lifetime? But when we're stuck with losses or things aren't going our way or we keep bumping up against this fear, the big old fear word that stops us, then we start searching, then we start paying attention, and then we have that opportunity to grow into who we've become and who we've come here to become and to accomplish. And so by looking at life from the soul's perspective, we can look at these belief systems that we've formed and begin to befriend them. Instead of making them the enemy, we begin to befriend it and to go, it's actually not the truth. And we start to become aware of that thinking that we've believed. We can start to disbelieve, but not in a way that makes us have to fight it, but rather to come from love. So when we really understand that it's all about love, everything is here to help us. Everything is here to call us to remember who we are and what we personally have decided we want to come in and learn. Life gets easier when we stop fighting it, but go, okay, and you know, it's an experiment. It's what I talk about in the book and what I've done before. Just try it out for a while. If you say, okay, I'm just going to pretend everything really is here for my highest good, for me to remember my soul's essence, for me to feel fulfilled at the end of this life, and therefore every single thing, if that were true, how would it then be helping me? And it's a way of starting to make your life a different type of journey. It's a very different type of journey, but it's coming from my own experience, it's definitely an exciting one. And it's one that at the end of the life, you can look back and go, wow, I did it different this lifetime, because I happen to believe in past lives, and I know we've come into this lifetime to learn things that we haven't learned, or as an extension of other lifetimes. We're growing. Each lifetime we're adding on, and we're adding on to who we've been and what we've learned. And at the end of this lifetime, it's a goal to say, I want to end this lifetime with 2 thumbs up, going, I finally remembered in the body who I was and what I was here to learn. Instead of waiting until we get out of the body and then we remember. It's like, oh, too late for that one. But it's not too late now to be able to know that there is within you the wisdom, the calling, the knowing, and absolutely the ability to be who you've come to be and to be all that you've come to be. And we do that simply over time by paying attention to what are these patterns, what are really the big ones. And one of the things I do in the book is to list about 15 of the most common that I found. In doing this work with thousands of clients, I can tell you we're all the same. We all have variations on these same themes. The big ones being I'm not good enough, there's something wrong with me, rejection, I get rejected, I'm stuck, I have to, all these thoughts that we tend to think, well, that's just life. I'm going, no, actually, that's not just life. That's a learning tool for you to learn that instead of being stuck. And one of the big things with stuck, I get a lot of stuck people because that's why you go and seek help, because you can't get past something. It's almost always fear, of course, that fear that says what's going to happen, or I don't know what I'm doing, or something, I'm going to lose something if I go for what I want, or the big one, I don't know enough, I'm not capable enough, what about this and what about that, all the different thoughts that play a role in being stuck. And what we do is we look at that and work with that thinking to help release it. And in the book there are different ways of doing it on your own, and a whole resource on the back, a list of resources of lots of different ways of helping with the beliefs, as well as then shifting the consciousness to go, it's twofold here. We want to de-energize the beliefs that have held us back, and then we want to go forward and go, but what do I want? What is it my soul is calling me to do and to be this lifetime? So I don't believe it's enough to just work on the beliefs and do therapy kind of stuff, or it's enough to just do all the visioning and do all the vision boards and all the positive affirmations. That's not going to do it either. It really is a combination of both sides of, we look at de-energizing and clearing and taking out the all this stuckness, so to speak, within us, and also knowing and going inside, going deep inside and going, what would I love? That's how we listen to what our life is telling us. Our life is calling us to simply remember, what would I love? Because what I would love is what I'm here to do. And what I would love is not the same as what would I like to do. That's a different, that's the ego, that's the humanness that wants to just maybe have fun or do stuff. The soul has this deep, deep wellspring that often includes service to others, being of value, helping to improve others' lives. There's something within every single person that is your calling. You didn't come into this lifetime just happenstance. You weren't some spirit floating by that says, oh, I think I'll take a life on now. No, it's much more complex than that. And so you've come in because there is something important for you to do. And I'm not talking it has to be worldwide, changing the lives of everyone, but it can be important in your own life, important in the family or friends, whatever it is. It can be to just bring beauty to the world, to be a bright light in a neighborhood. It does, there's no better or no worse. It's your own personal journey. It's an important journey because it's yours, and I absolutely know that it's within you, because that's how the whole system is set up. We bring it in with us, we get these limiting beliefs, we forget, we don't trust, and then we think we're lost. And then we remember, oh wait, I'm not lost. It is here, and we begin to find it and then live from it. And that is what makes the life journey so fun. And it makes it fulfilling, so that there's this deep sense of peace and well-being and gratitude no matter what. Because we come to that place to really know, no matter what, I'm on my path. And this is part of it. And it can be this grand adventure. It doesn't have to be the drama. It might be a comedy. It can be any kind of adventure you want it to be. But it really is a sense of well-being that comes. So seems as though the beliefs are very invisible to us. We're just living it out because they're subconscious. So they're literally in that part of the brain where we're not aware of it. But nothing could actually be further from the truth. They are so in front of our face every day, every moment of the day. We are living them out. So the easiest way to find your beliefs that are right in plain sight, because the beliefs are like this, they're right here, and we're just so used to that we don't even notice them. So you step back, you start to pay attention for one day, and you start to notice your thoughts, the thoughts you're thinking over and over again, if there's some certain ones that happen. Oh, I can't do this, or I can't do that. So you start to really pay attention and literally to write them down, because they're then escape again. And then you begin to also look at your life as though you were a third person observer. You step back and look at your life and go, if someone had that kind of a life, what are their patterns? What would be their beliefs? And you start to see it from not so personal, because when we're it, we take it very personally and we believe it. Another way to look at your beliefs is any time you have a thought that says, that's just how life is, or more, oh, that's just how I am. That's just how I am is a belief. Whatever you're saying, that's just how you are, that's because you have some subconscious belief systems that makes you react and respond. Or that's just how it is in my family. All of that are the beliefs. The way you might respond to people who are rude. You'll go, well, of course that's how you respond. No, there's a belief within you that says this is how I respond to that. So you begin to look at your life in smaller pieces to go every step of the way, everything you're doing, there are beliefs underneath it. Does that help too? Mm-hmm. It's what fuels us. And it's true, our passions can change over a lifetime, and there can be different times where we make major life changes based on there's something inside of us. The tricky part sometimes is that along with the passion, because the passion is going to have you change and transition, almost at the very same second perhaps, fear will step in as well. And so then we start to get confused of, am I supposed to do this? How can I do it? The fear is a part of the journey, and the fear is to be absolutely expected, because fear comes up whenever you're at the border of your comfort zone. When you're stepping into something new and transitioning, fear is going to be there. I don't care how much work you've done. This is a part of the process, and to expect the fear and to welcome the fear, because the fear means, oh, I'm at the edge of stepping into something new, rather than, oh, I'm at the edge of something and I need to step back because it's not safe. I'm at the edge of something and I need to keep going because that's what I've come to do. So we'll start to focus perhaps on the cost of, I've got too much to lose now. I know when I was in my 20s, I just moved across from California to Colorado, and I had nothing to lose because everything fit into the car. It was very easy to make a big move. Well, I made a move 16 years ago. There's a little more at stake when you're in your later years, and it doesn't matter because that's just the conditions. The real truth is, if we're called within us, there is a way to know how to make that transition without having to lose everything perhaps, or we do. There's so many times when we're called, sometimes it's in the later 40s, I find it happening a lot. People can call it midlife crisis or worst thing in the world, and it's often the best thing in the world. Being laid off can be the biggest gift there is, because then, if you'd be honest, it was probably a job you were wanting to leave and couldn't. Been there, done that, know what that is, and yet that is something to be celebrated, because you're then go inside to find out, what do I want? What would I love? And when you find out what you love, know that there is a way to get there. Now, you're not going to know every step, and that's where you start to look at what's your thinking that's making the transition more difficult. If the thought is, oh, I can't do this because there's not enough money, you start to work perhaps on those beliefs about money and worth and deserving and seeing where you're at with that. Because it's the inner world that's going to trip you up. It's not the outer world. The outer world will look like that's what's in your way, but it's really your own consciousness and that own sense of purpose. And if I really know I'm here to do it, you're not supposed to know how to do it. If it's a dream that's bigger than you, you're not going to know how to do every step. That's part of it. You're not supposed to. If you know how to do every step, you're not dreaming big enough. That's not your passion. That's not it. It's when you don't know how to do it and you have to really depend on your own intuition, guidance, source, help. That's when you know you're on the right path. It's scary. It's supposed to be, I think, because we're being challenged to grow. And it seems as though there's a lot to lose, but I also believe that there's a lot to lose, even more so by not following it. The more important is inside we begin to shrink. Something happens, and then the calling inside of us will get stronger. That's oftentimes where disease comes from. That we haven't listened and there's something we're supposed to be doing and our body is yelling at us to pay attention. So life will yell, bodies will yell to say pay attention. Pay attention to what you're being called to be and do. And don't let the fear stop you. Easy for me to stand here and say, but really the fear is part of the process. It's going to be there. Great. Work that I do besides belief systems is I do a lot with past lives and in between lives. I take people into the spirit world to understand who are they as a soul essence and why have they chosen this life. And there's a lot of care from my experience in the consciousness of the work that I've done. There's a lot of care in choosing the family and the different lessons, and the family is the perfect setup. In the book I talk about how your childhood is the absolute perfect setup for what you've come in here to learn and to be and to do. So you can look at your childhood and begin to see what limitations got put on you and what you took on is part of the path of what you're trying to grow through. So if someone's had a difficult childhood, they can begin to look at it to see where's the blessing. What is that there to help them to be and to do as the adult, as they become. In some work that I've done over the last many years, when I was 4, there was an incident in my life where there was a boy who was sexually taking advantage of me. I was just a little kid and he was a teenager. And I had worked a lot of therapy to get rid of it, and then did some work with John DeMartini method, in which I was able to go in and instead of pushing it away, starting to own that I have every single quality in me that boy did, that we all exhibit different things in different ways, but the different qualities are there, and that who I became as a result of that, of every little part of that incident, we took it apart, one thing at a time that was done, and it has helped me to become the therapist and the healer and the woman that I am today. And at the end of that 2 hours, I literally could have gotten down on my hands and knees and kissed his feet and said, thank you, thank you, thank you. And not from up here. It's not an intellectual, oh, I know there's a blessing in it. This was full body. I am grateful because I would not be who I am now if that hadn't happened. Now, on the human level, that's a difficult thing. But on a soul level, on a much deeper level, there is absolutely blessings in that. And I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it. To be who I am now, I wouldn't change any of it. And this is where it becomes a deep work to be able to really take life on a different level like this. Is lots of controversy for some people, but for those who embrace that we are absolutely divinely held at all times. There is divine order, there is divine grace, and it's all love. Not human love, which is, it's got some flaws in it, shall we say, but divine love, a higher level of love. Then we can begin to live our life not from being a victim. Everything starts to change. And when that all changes, life does get easier. It gets easier because we're not fighting it so much. We're not putting all of our energy into the past and going, oh, if only, and we carry the stories and we talk about all of that can be gone, and there's this spaciousness within us that then we get to create. But that spaciousness comes from having really worked through and released and done some deep inner work from what happened in childhood or any time along the way. It doesn't only happen there. So yes, we absolutely have chosen and have had a say in aspects of our life, including parents. Now, I'm not here to say that we've chosen every single thing. I don't know where we choose and where there's a higher order that chooses. They didn't tell me yet. People into the spirit world, what I have learned and experienced from them is that it's all one. We're the soul that comes into a life, and then we move on out, and then we come into another one, always for the purpose of really knowing and embodying oneness and love. And so we make choices, and we have lessons, and we each have our own particular soul personality. So we're not each learning the exact same lesson, obviously, because we have our own variations on some similar themes. But what happens is, yes, we absolutely desire to come into this lifetime, we greatly want to learn, and we come in by choice. And so we've got the bigger picture, the purpose, some of the lessons, the family. There are things we've absolutely made choices in. And then there may be things we haven't. And we've brought in some other lessons and learnings and energies and consciousness from other lifetimes. So it's not just linear thinking. It's not just a one kind of thing. It's so much more vast than any of us can even imagine. So I don't know all the details, but what I do know, I keep coming back to, it's all based in love. And so what we bring in from other lives, what we bring in from childhood, what we create in this lifetime, it's all for the same reason. That we can do anything. I tend not to think, but that's my own limited thinking, the little brain thinking that says we're probably gonna not go into animals, but then people who are animal lovers have a feeling that they've been animals before. The more I do this, the more I learn anything and everything is possible. We just see it as human now, but it's still all energy and consciousness. And there's a whole lot of dogs that are way more loving. So if you wanted to really experience love, why not come in as an animal sometime and get to really experience that consciousness of what is it to be absolutely unconditional loving? I think the easiest way would be a dog. Way easier than being a person, if that's what you want to learn. Children often, especially in other cultures, will remember their past lives, especially between about 2 when they start to speak and about 7, because their brain is still developing and it goes into a different development cycle at around 7. And children, when they're speaking of their past lives, it's different than when they're making up stories. If a child's making up a story, they keep changing it, it's fanciful, it's kind of sing-song. And when they're bringing in past life information, it is cut and dry, it's very short, it's adult-like, it's matter-of-fact, it doesn't change with time, and they don't defend it. They just state, Dad, we were together, I remember seeing you. I had a coworker come into my office a while back and said, what do I do? I was riding tandem with my son, a young son, going through a graveyard, and he said, Dad, I remember when I was the dad. And this man goes, what do I do? And I go, ask him about it, because it's fleeting and they may not remember. But when it comes out, there's very definite qualities that are not childlike at all.
I mean, he described
there's many books on my website, nancycanning.com. I have a book list and lots of books about past lives, old souls. I'm sure they're all here at this bookstore. Fabulous books where it's children especially remembering past lives, and then they can go and find the families. And they'll have birthmarks that relate to the death. It's not something you just have to take on some kind of faith, meaning you can't really prove it, but it sounds good and let's go along with it. There is so much evidence. Yes, and children absolutely do remember, and they can bring it in, and it's accurate. And then they move on and they don't talk about it anymore. It's just a forgotten thing, and so it's something that adults, especially when they hear it, can just take it in and then begin to notice. What can be helpful is if anything that child says, if it starts to show up in this lifetime as something to remember, oh, that might be something to go back and visit when they're older, to clear if there was something, if there was a suicide or something that in the past life, look and see how that might be affecting this life. But know that your child is very connected in, and what a wonderful thing.
And you can see the aura as well.
Children these days are amazing. They're bringing in many, many qualities. So I'm actually in the midst of writing the next book called Your Soul's Calling. So it's all about what you're asking for. So you're all just ahead of the time. Come back in another year and we'll do it again.